I woke up a few minutes before my alarm. The soft October sun was just beginning to slip through the narrow gap between our thick curtains. I carefully slid out from under the blanket, trying not to wake Mark. He was lying on his side, facing the wall, his breathing slow and steady. For a second, I let myself look at him. The profile I could recognize even in the dark. The high forehead, the straight nose with that tiny bump, the touch of gray at his temples. 23 years together. Those temples need a little trim, I thought mechanically as I quietly closed the bedroom door behind me. In the kitchen, I set the kettle on and walked a window. Early morning Denver was waking up. Down in the courtyard of our old apartment complex, a few people were already on the move. Mrs. Henderson was walking her overfed chihuahua. The maintenance guy, Raul, was sweeping the first fallen leaves into neat piles. It looked like a normal Saturday morning in early October. But for me, this one was special. I had been planning a surprise, a trip to our lake house, the one Mark and I hadn't visited together in over 2 months. Lately, he kept making excuses. Work, exhaustion, the weather. But before, every Saturday from spring to late fall, we would always escape to Lakewood Retreat, the cabin Mark inherited from his parents. Our family nest, a place where every corner held a memory. I smiled, remembering little Jacob chasing butterflies between the apple trees, Emily doing her homework on the old porch table, and Mark and I sipping wine under the stars, whispering about the kids' futures. I shook off the memories. I had to get everything ready before Mark woke up. He was supposed to drive to the cabin today. Alone. He said he needed to close the season, fix a few things before winter, and I planned to surprise him by arriving later with lunch and wine. I washed my face, tied my robe, and started cooking. First, the beef stew from his mother's recipe. God rest her soul. As I chopped the vegetables, I heard her voice again, firm but kind, teaching me how to care for a family. The way to a man's heart goes through his stomach, Val, she used to say. My Richard loved a hearty stew, and so does Mark. While the stew simmered and filled the kitchen with warmth, I made dough for my apple pie, my signature cabin dessert with cinnamon, vanilla, and apples from our own small orchard. By 8:30, with the dough chilling in the fridge, I slipped out to the store. At the boutique wine shop on the corner, I picked up a bottle of California Zinfandel, the exact wine we had on our 20th anniversary. Pricey, yeah, but what's too much for the man you love? The cashier, Linda, gave me a knowing smile. Celebrating something, Valerie? Just trying to make Mark happy, I muttered, feeling my cheeks warm like I was a teenager again, not a 45-year-old woman. When I returned home, Mark was already up making coffee. Morning, he mumbled, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. You're up early. Just felt like baking. I shrugged, hiding the wine in the cabinet. He nodded, barely listening, staring into his phone. Lately, that had become our routine. He used to start Saturdays with long hugs, slow breakfasts. Now, the moment I came close, he'd lock his screen. I sighed and returned to cooking. By the time he packed up the cabin, the pie was cooling and the stew was done. But something inside me twisted. Too many little things fell off lately. Late nights at work. A new Dolce & Gabbana cologne I didn't buy. Sudden passion for the gym, twice a week now, though he used to laugh at the idea. Stop it. I scolded myself, pouring the stew into a big thermos. He's stressed. Big project. Huge responsibility. That's all. His voice cut through my thoughts. I'm heading out, Val. Should be back tomorrow afternoon. He stood in the kitchen doorway, shaved, dressed in the new shirt I gave him for his birthday, smelling like that cologne. Maybe I'll come with you? I blurted out suddenly, ruining the surprise but unable to stop myself. Something flickered in his eyes, Annoyance? Fear? But disappeared instantly. Val, why would you go? I'll just be fixing leaks. Patching windows. You'll be bored out of your mind. I could help. Next time. He kissed me again, this time on the lips, but rushed, distant. When the door closed, I slowly removed my apron and sat down. My heart throbbed painfully. Why didn't he want me there? Our cabin used to be the place we reconnected, laughed, rested. Maybe I'm just getting old, I thought, looking at the veins showing on my hands. Maybe he was simply bored of me. I walked to the hallway mirror. A tired woman stared back. First fine lines, a little gray in my brown hair. Still pretty, but older. Mark always said I reminded him of a young Michelle Pfeiffer. I steadied myself. No, the surprise would happen, whether Mark liked it or not. By 10 a.m., everything was ready. The thermos wrapped in towels, the pie in its basket, the Zinfandel gift wrapped. I even stopped by a flower shop and bought a single red rose, symbol of our love. I put on Mark's favorite dress, the navy wrap dress he said made me look stunning, and opened my jewelry box. Inside lay my grandmother's ring, with a ruby from the early 1900s, the only thing I had left from the woman who raised me after that terrible car accident. She used to say, "Wear it when you need to say something important from the heart. This stone keeps the words you're afraid to speak." Today, I had many words from Mark, that I still loved him, that I noticed him drifting away, but I was ready to fight for us, that a family is more than routine. It's choosing each other again and again. One last look in the mirror, a touch of lipstick, a drop of perfume. Time to go. The drive to Lakewood took just over an hour. I guided my old Chevy with care, excitement fluttering in my chest. Outside, Colorado's fall painted everything gold and crimson. Our cabin sat on the edge of town. 15 acres, an old but sturdy house with a loft, and the 23 rose bushes Mark planted for every anniversary. Turning onto the familiar dirt road, my heart started pounding. Just a few more minutes. A hug, a smile, maybe a little reminder of who we used to be. But when I pulled up to the cabin, a surprise was waiting for me. The gate was slightly open. Strange. Mark always locked it. And next to his black Toyota sat a car I didn't recognize. A silver Hyundai Elantra. A colleague. I tried to reassure myself. Maybe Mr. Stevens from next door. But the tightness in my chest said otherwise. I stepped out of my car, holding the bags with food and the wine. From the porch, I heard voices, a man's and a woman's. I froze for a second, took a deep breath of the cool October air, and walked toward the house. The gate creaked softly as I pushed it open. The bags fell heavy, stew in one hand, pie and wine in the other, and this strange feeling kept nagging at me, as if I were a guest in my own home. My steps up the familiar walkway felt shaky, like the ground was sliding beneath me. Inside, it was warm. Mark always lit the fireplace first thing, his childhood habit. His grandmother used to teach him, at age 10, how to stack the logs just right. On the porch, I set my jacket aside and carried the bags into the kitchen. What I saw made my heart stop. Dirty dishes on the table. 2 plates with the remains of scrambled eggs. 2 coffee mugs. A half-eaten toast with jam. An open pack of expensive Dunhill cigarettes. Mark hadn't smoked in 3 years. He quit after his cardiologist warned him. And there on the counter, an ashtray with 2 cigarette butts. One with bright lipstick. A neighbor dropped by, maybe Diane from across the street. But I knew Diane didn't smoke. And she definitely didn't wear that kind of loud lipstick. Then I heard it, from upstairs. A woman's laugh. Light, young, playful. Then Mark's voice, soft, intimate. Words unclear, but tone unmistakable. And then her laugh again. My legs nearly gave out. I held on to the counter to keep myself upright. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. I forced myself toward the staircase. The wooden steps marked and I stained walnut brown, just as past spring suddenly felt endless. With each step, the voices grew clearer. "And what did you tell her?" A young woman's voice, husky, teasing. "That I'm busy at the cabin," Mark replied, "closing up for the season." "And she bought it?" "Of course. She always does." Those 3 words hit me like a blade. She always does. 23 years of marriage crumbled in a single breath. The bedroom door, the door to our bedroom, was slightly open. The room with the king-size bed we bought for our anniversary. With a quilt I sewed by hand. With our kids' photo on the nightstand. I pushed the door. They were sitting on the bed, sheets messy, pillows everywhere. Mark, my husband, half-dressed, jeans on, shirt unbuttoned. Beside him, a young red-headed woman in a silk robe barely covering her thighs. In our bed, 2 glasses and an empty bottle of martini on the nightstand. Time stopped. I felt nothing. No body. No breath. Only a cold expanding inside me, swallowing everything. Pain, anger, disbelief. "Val," Mark jumped up, panic on his face. "This isn't what you think." The woman clutched her robe tight, fear in her wide green eyes. My fingers opened on their own. The bottle of Zinfandel slipped and shattered on the wooden floor. The dark red wine spread like blood across the plank's mark, and I refinished last summer. "Val, listen." Mark stepped forward. "This is just a misunderstanding. This is Jenna. She's a relative." I stumbled back, away from his hand. I couldn't hear anything, just my heart pounding and one thought screaming. "Run." "Valerie, wait," he shouted as I bolted down the stairs, skipping steps. I grabbed my purse, my keys. He ran after me, trying to explain, to touch my shoulder, but all I heard was static. All I felt was panic. "Let go," I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine. "Don't touch me." I tore myself free and rushed out the door. The last thing I remember was Mark's shocked face in the doorway and the red-headed woman standing on the stairs behind him. I don't remember starting the car or pulling out onto the highway. Tears blurred everything, but I kept driving. Faster, faster. Only when the speedometer hit 70 miles per hour did my mind snap back. I can't crash. I have kids. They don't deserve to suffer because of their father. I pulled sharply onto the shoulder and turned off the engine. And then it hit me. The sobs, the shaking, the screams ripping through my chest. I pounded the steering wheel, the seat, anything, trying to force out the pain tearing me apart. She always does. My phone buzzed nonstop. Mark. I didn't answer. Let him choke on his excuses. Let him drown in his lies. I don't know how long I sat there. When the tears finally stopped, I stared at a lone birch tree swaying in the wind. Lonely, weather-beaten, just like me. My fingers touched my grandmother's ruby ring, the one she said held words too hard to say out loud. Now, I had nothing left to say. All my words had turned to ash. I drove slowly back toward town, refusing to go home. Not yet. I needed shelter, a place to breathe, to think. I stopped at a roadside diner to wash my face. In the cracked bathroom mirror, my swollen eyes and smeared mascara stared back at me. And suddenly, I felt anger at myself for trusting, for believing. She always does. Half an hour later, sitting in my car outside a mall parking lot, I opened my laptop and searched for rentals. I didn't have much money, but enough for now. A site listed several short-term options. I chose a modest studio across town, $30 a night. The owner, an older woman with tired eyes, handed me the keys without questions. The apartment was small but clean. A couch, a table, a microwave, a window overlooking a noisy avenue. I didn't care. I bought essentials at a nearby grocery store, just enough to get by. The cashier barely looked at me. My phone kept buzzing with Mark's calls. I turned it off. Back in the studio, I stood under the hot shower for a long time, trying to wash off not just a day, but the 23 years that came before it. Wrapped in a scratchy towel, I sat on the windowsill with a mug of strong tea, staring at the evening city lights. It felt like my life had ended today. Everything that mattered, everything that meant home, was gone. I felt like a tiny boat, cut loose in the shore, drifting into open sea. No oars, no sail, no compass. At some point, exhaustion dragged me into sleep right there in the chair. I woke up to the vibration of my phone. A short text alert. I turned it on. 47 missed calls from Mark, and 2 messages. The first, "Val, please pick up. We need to talk." The second had just arrived. "Valerie, this isn't what you think. Jenna, she's my cousin's daughter from Springfield. She's having problems with her husband. I'm just helping. Call me, please." I read the message over and over. No fresh pain this time, only a cold, piercing rage. He still lies. After everything, he keeps lying. I turned the phone off and flopped onto the stiff couch, pulling an old throw over my shoulders. Outside, the city buzzed on, indifferent to my wrecked life. Somewhere, 70 miles away in our lake house, my husband was probably still comforting his relative with marital problems. The night in that stranger's studio dragged on forever. I tossed and turned until dawn, falling into heavy blank sleep and surfacing back into a reality worse than any nightmare. Around 5 in the morning, I finally threw the blanket off and sat on the edge of the couch, knees hugged tight. A gray October dawn was creeping in. Rain tapped the eaves, blurring the outlines of opposite buildings. The weather matched my mood, damp, joyless, hopeless. Scenes from the day before replayed like a stuck record. Red hair on the pillow, the rumpled sheets, the broken bottle spreading dark liquid across the floor. And his words, "She always does." Yes, I believed. Always, without question, even when my gut whispered otherwise. I remembered his September business trip to Tulsa. Mark came back different, brighter than I'd seen him in years, with a strange glow and a gift, an expensive Givenchy perfume, too pricey for his usual presents. I'd been thrilled, thinking maybe this was a turning point. And then that scrap of paper I'd found in his jacket pocket when I was about to drop it at the dry cleaner. Someone's number and the initials JK. He told me it was a client for a project. I believed him. Worst of all, it was our son Jacob who first noticed something. My 22-year-old spotted his father in a cafe, the chocolate bar, sitting with a woman. Young, striking, in a business suit, he told me that night. Dad called her a colleague, Jenna, and laughed off Jacob's suspicion. "Come on, Jacob. It's a work meeting." But all the little changes kept piling up. The sudden gym routine, new shirts, different morning habits, expensive shower gels. He used to make fun of men who fuss with lotions. I saw it all and didn't want to see. Around 10, the phone rang. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Mark flashed across. Once, I'd put a heart next to his name in my contacts. "Val," he said, relieved. "Where are you? I've been up all night looking for you." "No, Mark," I said, voice dry and flat. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying." "Listen," he started. His stories began to tangle. First, Jenna is his mom's cousin's daughter from Springfield. Then, she's the wife of a colleague in his department. Then, she's related on his dad's side. The inconsistencies were almost comical if they weren't so cruel. He stumbled, tried to patch versions together. I felt bitter bile rise. I couldn't take it anymore. Enough, Mark. I need time. I hung up and turned the phone off. My hands were shaking. The day crawled. I wandered a small rented place, flipping the kettle on and off, unable to focus on anything. A fog filled my head. Somewhere deep inside a sliver of hope lurked. What if there really is an explanation? What if it's all a misunderstanding? At 2 in the afternoon, I turned the phone back on. Missed calls, messages. Before I could read them, it rang again. Val, please listen to me. His voice was nearly desperate. I'll explain. Jenna, she's in a bad spot. She's depressed. Her husband hits her. She needed help. In our bed. I asked cold. No, nothing happened. She came early. She was distraught. I let her rest. I pressed end. Hours slid by. The daylight shortened. The calls kept coming, and when they did, his tone changed, now irritated. This is a misunderstanding. Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill? She's a distant relative. She ran from an abusive, drunk husband and just needed a place to stay a couple of days. Something in me went oddly calm. In one day, she had been his mom's cousin's daughter, the wife of a colleague, a blood relative on his father's side, and now, again, just a distant relative. Pick a story, I thought. I hung up. I made a sudden decision. I was going back to the lake house right now. I had to collect my things. Anything that was mine. Maybe they were already gone. Still, I needed to go put a period on this. The drive back took longer, and early, heavy snowfall had started, the first of the season. Big flakes settled on the windshield. The wipers fought to keep up. The landscape outside was a dull, weary gray. The trees stood bare against the dim sky, pulling into the lakeside community. Relief hit when I didn't see Mark's truck. He'd left. I parked and walked toward the gate when a voice called out, "Valerie, what a surprise to see you." It was our neighbor, Mrs. Carter, a round, warm-faced woman in her 60s who always wore a scarf. She rushed toward me, juggling a heavy bag. "Are you all right?" she asked, worry creasing her face. I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't cooperate. "Just came to pick up a few things," I said. She glanced around, lowered her voice, and blurted, "I've been meaning to tell you since yesterday. It's the redhead. She's been coming here for a while, you know." Mrs. Carter shifted her heavy bag, lowering her voice even though the yard was empty. At first I thought she was a relative, but then I heard them laughing together on the porch. Last weekend. I felt the ground tilt under me. Last weekend. When Mark told me he was going on a fishing trip with his co-workers. "I'm sorry to meddle," she added quickly, but I could tell something wasn't right. "She's been here 3, maybe 4 times this month. Always that same car. The silver one. Hyundai Elantra." I said mechanically, "Yes, that one. She dresses fancy, too. You can tell she's got money. And laughs all the time, just giggles and giggles. Doesn't seem depressed at all." "Depressed?" I jerked my head up. "Well, yes," Mrs. Carter said. "I overheard Mr. Bennett on the phone yesterday. Him telling you she's depressed, her husband hurting her and all that. Nonsense. She's cheerful like a bird. Perfect makeup, expensive clothes." I thanked her, barely managing to keep my voice steady, and walked toward the house. The doorknob rattled. The lock had been changed. My key didn't fit. After 23 years of marriage, he changed the lock. With a bitter smile, I turned and walked back to the car. I drove straight home, to our downtown apartment. The moment I stepped inside, I went to the bedroom. My grandmother's ruby ring, the real one, was in the jewelry box on the vanity. I'd worn a cheap copy yesterday. I sighed with relief and slipped it onto my finger. Then something flashed in my memory. When the red-headed woman jumped from the bed, clutching her robe. She'd adjusted something on her hand, something that gleamed. A cold realization hit me. I dialed Mark. "Why did you make a copy of my ring?" I asked the moment he picked up. The silence on the line said everything. I wanted to give you a gift," he said weakly. "A keepsake." But she didn't want it. "A ruby ring," I said through clenched teeth. "A perfect copy of my grandmother's heirloom." "It's not what you think," he stammered. "Listen." I hung up. Inside me rose a new feeling, one I'd never known so sharply before. A cold, crystal clear resolve. No more tears. No more excuses. No more fairy tales. I called my daughter. "Emily, it's Mom. I need you to come home." And called Jacob too. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. All of us need to talk." I hung up and stood by the window. Snow still drifted down. Soft, calm, indifferent. Tomorrow I would hear the truth. All of it. And Mark would have to tell it in front of our children. At exactly 6 p.m. the next day, I walked into our apartment. The silence inside felt charged, like the moment before a storm. "Mom!" Jacob ran into the hall and wrapped his arms around me. "We were worried sick. Where were you?" "I needed time." I stroked his cheek. "And what are you doing here so early?" "I asked for 6. "Dad called," he muttered. "Said there was some misunderstanding. We had to find you. Emily took the night train." I stepped into the living room and froze. Mark stood by the window with a cup of tea. Emily sat in an armchair, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She already suspected something. "Mom, tell me," she said, jumping up to hug me. "Dad is saying weird things. I don't understand." I looked at Mark. He avoided my eyes, posture tense, ready to defend himself. "Let's all sit," I said. Emily and Jacob sat on the couch beside me. Mark took the chair opposite. Strangely, I felt no fear, no shame, just exhaustion, and the need to end this farce once and for all. "Kids," Mark began, cutting me off. "Your mother misunderstood the situation. It was an unfortunate." "I'll tell them what I saw," I interrupted calmly. "On Saturday, I went to the lake house with surprise for your father and found him in our bed with a young woman." Emily gasped, hand over her mouth. Jacob shot to his feet, fists clenched. "Dad, is that true?" "No," Mark snapped. "It's not what you think. Yes, Jenna was there, but nothing happened. Jenna Kravitz is the wife of my colleague from the design department. They're having marital issues. Her husband is abusive. I'm helping her as a friend." "And you're in Mom's bedroom?" Emily shot back. "And why have we never heard of her?" "I didn't want to burden you kids with someone else's personal problems," he muttered. "It's delicate." "Wait." Jacob leaned forward. "Is she the redhead I saw you with at the Coffee Bean in September?" Mark froze. "Yes," he said finally. "We were discussing how to help her legally." I said nothing. I didn't need to. My children were smart. They were watching their father's story crumble with every sentence. "Why did you change the lock at the lake house?" I asked quietly. "What?" The old one broke." "And why did the neighbors see this woman at the cabin 3 or 4 times this month, including the weekend you supposedly went fishing with co-workers?" Mark paled. Silence stretched thick and heavy. "Dad," Emily said softly but firmly, "tell the truth. We're not children anymore." Mark opened his mouth, but before he could speak, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. Jenna flashed on the screen. We all froze. Mark reached for the phone, but Emily was faster. She grabbed it and hit speaker. "Yes?" she said, staring straight at her father. "Mark." Jenna's bright voice rang out. "Where are you? I've been waiting for an hour at our cafe. I have a surprise for you." "This isn't Mark," Emily cut in, voice calm as steel. This is his daughter. Silence. Long. Stunning. Daughter? The woman finally said. He has kids? He told me he was divorced. Emily looked at her father with such raw hurt that it stabbed through me. No, she said. My parents have been married for 23 years. A click. Jenna hung up. Silence swallowed the room whole. Jacob stared at the floor. Emily stared at her father. I swear she aged a decade in those few minutes. Well, Mark exhaled, rubbing his face. Now you know. Not everything, Jacob said quietly. How long has this been going on? Mark hesitated. For months, he admitted. I met Jenna at a project presentation. She's young, fun. I got confused, but I was planning to end it. I even had a copy of your mom's ring made. Emily shot upright. Dad, do you even understand what you've done? You can't judge me. Mark exploded suddenly. You don't know what it's like feeling life slip by, stuck in routine, old age creeping. Enough. I lifted a hand. Kids, give us a moment. They exchanged a glance but obeyed, stepping into the kitchen. When the door closed, I turned to Mark. Pack your things. What? He stared at me. You heard me. Pack your things and get out. You can't just throw me out of my own home, he barked. This is my apartment, I said steadily. Inherited from my parents. Now leave. You'll regret this, he hissed. You're nothing without me. A housewife with no degree, no career. No, I said quietly. You don't get to rewrite who I am. Go to your Jenna, the one who doesn't even know you have children. Tell her what a devoted father you are. Something in my voice finally shut him up. Mark got up without another word and walked to the bedroom. 20 minutes later, he came back with a suitcase and a duffel bag. Emily and Jacob stepped out of the kitchen just as he stood in the hallway. I'll call you, he told the kids, eyes fixed anywhere but on me. We'll talk calmly. This is all just a misunderstanding. We'll fix everything. No one answered. The front door slammed, and only when his footsteps faded down the stairwell, my legs gave out. I sank onto a chair, shaking. Mom. Emily crouched beside me, wrapping her arms around me, tears streaming. Please forgive him. There's nothing to forgive, Jacob said quietly, sitting on my other side. Dad made his choice. I looked at my children, so grown, so steady, and felt something unexpected, relief, as if the weight I'd carried for years had finally fallen off. I'm filing for divorce, I said, brushing tears from Emily's cheeks. It's final. Neither of them argued. We sat together, holding hands, while evening settled outside. Our family would never look the same again. But maybe that wasn't tragedy. Maybe it was a beginning. Snow fell in heavy flakes as I stood by the window of the notary's office, watching December bustle outside. December, usually a month of hope, had become, for me, a month of endings. Mrs. Bennet, sign here and here. The notary's voice pulled me back. Mark sat across the table, thinner, grayer, eyes full of guilt and something like quiet resignation. So the apartment and the lake house go fully to you, the notary concluded. And Mr. Bennet keeps his personal belongings. Correct. We nodded at the same time. The division turned out surprisingly calm. Mark didn't contest anything. The apartment had been mine before the marriage, and we agreed to sell the cabin. Too many painful memories lingered there. The kids supported that decision. The divorce took a month, filed jointly, without accusations, without scenes, as if all the rage had burned out in those October days, leaving only ash. Mark rented a small place in a nearby district. On his own initiative, he offered to cover half the household expenses. The kids were grown, so there was no talk of child support. But the gesture mattered more as an admission of responsibility than anything financial. Valerie, he caught up to me outside the notary's office. I wanted to ask, how's the job search? I'm looking, I shrugged. After 20 years out of the workforce, the sentence felt enormous. Maybe I could help? At my firm, No. I cut him off gently but firmly. I'll manage. And I did. Every day I sent resumes, went to interviews, studied. My old business degree from 1998 was a fossil. Marketing, digital systems, accounting software, all foreign to me. But in mid-January, persistence paid off. A small company, BookServe, offered me a trainee bookkeeping position. Low pay, barely enough, but it was a start. You'll have to learn a lot, warned the director, Mrs. Turner. But you have the basics and the willingness. That's more important. I'll never forget my first day. Fear, excitement, adrenaline. I can do this, I kept telling myself as I stared at the unfamiliar accounting software. I will do this. And I did, little by little, staying late, watching tutorials, asking colleagues questions. By February, I spent $150 on professional courses, an investment in myself. Life slowly settled. Jacob moved in with me, insisting he wanted to help, but I knew he simply wanted to be close. We shared dinners, talked about his university classes, tutoring job, plans for grad school. Normalcy returned. Emily visited every weekend, calling every day. At the end of February, she arrived with a special announcement. "Mom, you're going to be a grandma," she said over dinner, cheeks flushed. "What? Already?" I blinked. "Due in September," she smiled. 12 weeks now. For the first time in months, I cried from joy. As Jacob popped champagne for us, sparkling juicer Emily, I felt something shift inside me. One story was ending, and another was beginning. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, my friend Larissa called. "Val, listen," she said, worried. "Someone named Jenna wants to meet you tomorrow at the Coffee Bean on Main. Says it's important." My heart skipped a beat. Jenna, the redhead from the cabin. Why would she want to see me? "Tell her I'll come," I said after a moment. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. I arrived exactly on time. Habit from my new job. Jenna was already at a window table. Vibrant red hair, delicate features, maybe 15 years younger than me. Beautiful, composed. But her hands trembled slightly as she twisted a napkin. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I wasn't sure I should. I sat down, keeping my voice steady. "Why did you want to see me?" "I need to return this." She opened her purse and set a small box on the table. "And I need to tell you something. I didn't know Mark was married." My jaw clenched. He told me he was divorced. Alone. No kids. I opened the box. Inside lay the exact copy of my grandmother's ruby ring. "I suspected it wasn't just jewelry," Jenna whispered. "The design, it's antique, not something modern." When I asked him about it, he said it was a keepsake from his mother. I sat in silence, staring at the ring. Mark had commissioned a perfect replica. Same cut on the stone, the same filigree along the band. It must have cost a small fortune. "I'm sorry this happened," Jenna said, looking straight at me. "But you should know I wasn't the first." She set a stack of printouts on the table. Screenshots, conversations, Mark messaging other women. Marina from accounting, a massage therapist he'd written. The messages were full of tenderness, promises, the same words of love I had heard from him for decades. "I found out by accident," Jenna explained, eyes down, when he left his phone unattended. "I thought you deserved to know the truth." "Why tell me now?" I asked, For months had already passed. I quit my job at Tech Build. I got hired somewhere else. She said, I'm not afraid of him anymore, and you have the right to know. We sat in that cafe for almost 2 hours. Strange as it sounds, I felt no hatred for her. She had been deceived too. Like me, the difference was just time. I'd lost 23 years. She had lost 4 months. I left the meeting with a calmness I hadn't expected. The last piece of the puzzle had clicked into place. The late nights, the business trips, the new habits, all finally made sense. My life, too, was finding a new meaning. That evening Larissa called, worried. How are you, friend? Did the meeting upset you? On the contrary, I told her. I felt lighter, as if a stone had been lifted from my chest. Listen, I have an idea, Larissa brightened. Let's go to the sea. 7 days in Sochi in March. Fresh air, waves. You need a reset, Valusha. Money worried me, work, expenses, but Larissa was right. I'd sold the lake house for 1,000,000 rubles. I'd set some aside for renovating the apartment and save for my future grandchild. I could spend a little on myself. Okay, I decided. Let's go in March. February snow swirled outside the window as I booked the trip. A few months earlier, I had thought my life was ruined. Now, 3 months on, I had a job, children who supported me, a grandchild on the way, and a friend ready to take me to the end of the earth. Most importantly, there was me, stronger than ever. Sochi's sun felt like a balm. I sat on the terrace of a small hotel, watching sea meet sky, breathing in a sense of ease I hadn't felt in years. The week cost 45,000 for two, not luxury, but not bare bones either. A modest hotel 3 minutes from the beach, breakfast included, long walks along the promenade, no schedule, just the sea and spring arriving early. On the third day, as Larissa and I ate at a waterfront cafe, a man asked to join us. He was tall, about 50, silver at the temples, with thoughtful eyes behind glasses and a restrained smile. Please, Larissa said, winking. He introduced himself as Dr. Michael V., a cardiologist from Denver, small world. He'd been making the same trip every March for years. Conversation flowed easily. He loved classical music, spoke about his work, his son in Moscow. Are you married? He asked when Larissa stepped away. Was. I answered, divorced 3 months ago after 23 years. There was understanding in his eyes. Me too, he said. 2 years, 18 years together. We talked until the cafe closed. The next day we met again, then again. Larissa tactfully left us alone sometimes, saying some museum or shop awaited her. When the trip ended, we exchanged contacts. I didn't expect anything serious. Resort romances are rarely more. But we kept texting. In mid-April, he invited me to an exhibition. I felt a flutter of nerves, but agreed. Our first official date back home was at the opera, the Swan Lake I've always loved. He greeted me with a modest bouquet of lilies of the valley, simple but thoughtful. After the performance, we walked the city at night. He didn't pressure me or make grand promises. He simply stayed close and attentive. I feel you're not ready yet, he said gently at my door. That's okay. We have time. Those words struck me. No pressure. Respect for my space. April brought more changes. My probation ended, and my salary rose to 42,000 rubles, a modest sum. But for the first time in 20 years, I felt financially independent. Colleagues, mostly women my age, became friends and guides. Jacob did well, too. He defended his thesis and was accepted into graduate school with a scholarship. Mom, now I can contribute more, he said proudly. At the start of May, Emily called with the news. It's a girl. I cried, not from sorrow but from happiness. They planned to name her Anna, after my grandmother. I began knitting tiny socks and searching for little things to welcome her. Preparing for my granddaughter filled me with a new kind of joy. Unexpectedly, Mark called. We'd barely spoken outside logistics and the divorce. "Val," he said softly, "Emily told me you're having a girl. I'd like to be part of her life, if you don't mind." We met calmly, like grown-ups. "Of course," I said. "You're a grandfather. For the kids and for the baby, we must keep things civil." He looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected my measured response. I realized I felt neither hatred nor bitterness, only exhaustion and a gentle sadness for what might have been. That evening I opened the jewelry box. The ruby glittered in lamplight, deep and telling. My grandmother had said that the stone keeps the words too hard to say. I decided that when Anna grows up, the ring would be hers. The replica that Jenna returned I donated to a charity auction for a children's home. Let it raise funds to help someone else. The apartment renovation neared completion. From the sale of the lake house, I updated the kitchen and bathroom, replaced windows, and set aside money for my future granddaughter's education. I changed everything that reminded me of the old life. New wallpaper, a new bed. I gave the bed we slept in to charity, replaced the living room sofa with a sand-colored leather couch. Pictures of Emily and Jacob. Emily with her rounded belly, Jacob in his suit after graduate school acceptance, sat on the dresser next to the jewelry box. I put the ruby on my finger. It shimmered like the wisdom of the women who came before me. Wear it when you need to tell someone something important. My grandmother had said. I thought, one day it might help Anna find true love. Love based on respect and freedom, not fear and dependence. Through spring, the city washed itself clean. Betrayal had not been the end. It had been the doorway to a new beginning. I had become the protagonist of my life, not an extra. I had learned to value myself, my limits, my desires. I'd learned forgiveness and the strength to start anew at 45. On the night I finally slept without nightmares, Michael texted, "Looking at the sea and thinking of you." I wrote back, "Missing you too. Maybe next time we'll go together." See, lazy breakfast on the terrace. He replied instantly, "Absolutely. Can't wait." The apartment felt airy and fresh. I had deliberately removed every trace of the past. New curtains, new dishes. Even the old football couch was gone. Photos of the family glowed on the dresser. The future had a warm, human center. 8 months had passed since that October morning, when I opened the cabin door, and everything fell apart. Back then, the world seemed to have collapsed. Now it felt like a long, deliberate rebirth. I remember the first nights after betrayal. Each breath hard, sleepless nights in a rented studio, gathering the shards of a broken life with bleeding fingers. The first tentative steps toward a new reality, job hunting, learning, independence. The children's support made survival possible. Little by little the pain lessened, then gave way to calm, then curiosity, then quiet joy. I had once been a housewife, the wife of an engineer, planned out for years. Now Valentina Bennett, accountant at BookServe, soon-to-be grandmother, was learning to love and trust again. I knew the price of betrayal and the gift of forgiveness. I had found the courage to start over. On the balcony, I wrapped myself in a warm blanket and watched the last pink rays of sunset turn the roofs rosy. A cup of Melissa tea steamed in my hands. Michael had told me how calming it is for the heart. I thought of the future. The baby's first cries, new project at work, possible trips with Michael, books unread, films unscripted, spring waking in my soul. Grandma's ring rested in its box, waiting for its turn. Maybe it would help Anna find true love. Maybe it would teach her, as it had taught me, that the first and most important love is the love you give yourself. Only when you truly cherish and respect yourself will others do the same. I fell asleep with no fear, only plans, small joys, a steady heart. Tomorrow there will be work, errands, tiny discoveries. The day after that Michael would return. We'd go to a French comedy. On Saturday, Emily would come over with Igor, and we'd pick a stroller. In a month, Jacob and I would fly to Crimea. He'd won a university trip. Life goes on. And you know what? It's beautiful. Even after betrayal. Even after divorce. Even when everything that seemed immovable shatters. Sleeping. I thought not of the past, but of the future. My granddaughter who will soon be here, new projects, travels, books, and the spring that had just started in my life. Grandma's ring waited in its box, patient as the years. Maybe one day it will bring Anna true love. Maybe it will teach her the lesson I learned. The main love in a woman's life is the love for herself. And when you love and honor yourself, others will follow. With that thought I slept, calmly, without nightmares. A new life had already begun, and I was ready to live it fully, brightly, honestly, without fear and looking back. Because the future was mine to shape.